I've got to be honest, it makes me very happy indeed. It's a cause for celebration when the latest live service totally flops. No one's playing, no one's interested. The company behind it loses a lot of money. And the latest in a line of these is Concord. We had Suicide Squad earlier in the year. Maybe there's others I'm forgetting, but Concord appears to be the latest that is going to flop miserably. And this isn't some indie title or something that people are talking about. This is a Sony published game. They actually bought the studio behind it, Firewalk Studios, not long ago. It's shaping up to do very badly, and it makes me happy. Because almost everything rotten, bad about this industry, the video game industry, it all comes back to live service. That to me extends to mobile games as well, but pretty much just any title where the aim is extracting recurring revenue from the player. I firmly believe that it isn't really possible to make a game that's designed in good faith where the whole business model is about those recurring purchases, recurring transactions. I don't think it can really be done because the whole mindset of a live service game versus the box price game, the $60, $70 one-off purchase like an Elden Ring or a Baldur's Gate 3, they're just so different. I mean, a live service game, you might have the lore, you might have the story and everything else, but it really just comes down to designing an addicting gameplay loop. Nothing else really matters. It's purely seasoning, it's stuff sprinkled on top, like cool characters, Overwatch, there's a bit of a lore or whatever. No one really cares about that. There's like maybe 2% of people who give a shit. For the most part, it is the addicting gameplay loop. When you've got the $60, $70 game, and that's literally it, it's a different story because there might be lots of different reasons people buy that. It might be for the story, it might be for the gameplay loop as well, it might be for the world, it might be for lots of things. But the game developer really just needs to get you to buy the game once. That's it. And that really encourages quality. It encourages good design because they need to do a number of things. They're trying to get good reviews, not just from idiot critics, but also from the players as well. You've got the Steam user reviews and so on. They want those. Quality word of mouth, especially in 2024, it has never been more important. You get a game like Baldur's Gate 3, which was probably seen as almost niche, you could say, maybe a bit higher than niche, but certainly not mainstream, certainly not one of the big games of the year. No one expected it. But because the word of mouth was so positive, it gets everyone buying. And again, it just encourages quality. It's a simple transaction. I buy the game for $60, and then you don't really care what happens after that. You probably want me to have a good time, so I recommend it to a friend, I maybe leave a positive review, but you're not doing sort of weird casino-like tricks within the game. Like, you don't care if I log in every single day. You've already got my money. So you don't need to play psychology tricks on me. Oh, you need me to get addicted for a certain amount of hours a day, all these little things. Because that is what happens in live service games. Totally different design. In live service, it all purely comes down to getting you addicted somewhat to the game, getting you into that loop, those daily habits. You're logging in weekly rewards, all this sort of nonsense. It almost doesn't resemble the traditional video game. If you go back to playing Ocarina of Time, Crash Bandicoot, whatever it is, video games of today in the live service mold, it's almost not the same activity, in my opinion. I think it's something else entirely. It might still look like a video game, but it's entirely different. It's no longer about you just having a bit of fun, maybe recommending it to a friend, and that's it. They need you to keep coming back. They need you to be logging in every single day, every single week. And then the goal from there really is to get you to spend money knowing that you probably don't want to. So it's kind of like a game of tug of war. What can they do? What tricks can they play? Psychological deception to get you to spend money. And then you're on that treadmill. Eventually you get to a place where you feel good spending the money because you're so invested you just can't stop. It's like the modern day version of a casino. That's kind of what a lot of these live services are. And I understand that there are some good ones. For instance, Helldivers 2 got a good reception. I personally didn't play it because I'm just sick of the live services. But I also understand I might occasionally miss out on something decent. Not every online game is bad. I mean, I've played these games myself in the past. I played Call of Duty 2 back in 2005 online. It was the only game I played. I transitioned to World of Warcraft. I played that for years and years. So I've personally just seen that difference between single-player gaming and what we get in the online world. It's totally different. I'm much more invested now in single player. I want to see that thrive. And for me, it is a little bit of a battle now because most of the video game executives, their ideal world is no one cares about single player anymore and everyone just wants live service. There was even the EA CEO who went full mask off once, and he said something like, gamers don't want simply one playthrough single-player games and that's it. Gamers all want live service. They want that reoccurring experience they can keep coming back to time and time again. And the truth is, that's his dream world, his scenario, his fantasy. The gamers don't want that. They just want a good quality game. For some people like me, that's single player. For other people, it's maybe both. They don't care if it's an online game or if it's a single player game. As long as it's quality, that's what they really want. But as we've seen with online games, it's often not in the company's interest to deliver quality. It's about getting you on the treadmill, spending money. That's the aim. And unfortunately with live service games, quality doesn't actually translate into money necessarily. That's why they have to rely on these psychological tricks and so on. But seeing Concord fail puts a smile on my face. We look at the Steam charts for the beta. Now, I was told that the beta for this game that's going on right now, that it was free to access. I'm not sure if that's totally true or if you maybe need to pre-order it, because if it's free to access, less than 2,500 players is the all-time peak. That's an absolutely pathetic number, given even Redfall, I think, got up to 6,000. Suicide Squad was doing much better than this, and sure, the game hasn't officially released, but if it was free to play the beta, you'd think people would be checking this out. I mean, it's a Sony first-party title. It's probably their biggest budget game of the year, and they've been doing this massive live service push. Back in the PS4 days, they were doing all the new single-player IPs. You had Bloodborne, the first Horizon, they were focused on it. Since then, they've been trying to chase the cash cow with live service, and Concord was one of those games failing miserably. It might be the biggest financial flop that they've had for a long, long time, it's looking like, and they might downplay how critical this game was going to be for them. Oh, it's just something we're putting out there. But I mean, Firewalk Studios, Sony bought that studio, meaning that they saw the work that was going on with Concord when it was in development, and they said, we love what you're doing, we're going to buy this studio, we're going to invest. And I'm not even sure how to describe this game. I mean, I can say what pretty much everyone else has been saying, that it looks like generic Marvel slop, looks like pretty much everything else on the market in the live service space. Everything looks exactly the same, and you just know how this happens. For instance, you've got the purple everywhere. Every game, live service like this, it's purple, purple, purple. You've got the neon green. And you just know the game's being crafted. Suits sitting around the boardroom. They've got the Excel spreadsheets. And it's like test focus groups. They find if you've got the right color shade of purple, for instance, and that's going to draw more eyeballs on the store, get more people flowing in, potentially spending money. There's no creativity here. I don't believe that the team Firewalk Studios making Concord, I don't believe that most of the team are actually sitting there and going, this is my dream game. This is why I got into the industry. This is what we're creating. Obviously, the team leads will tell you, oh, this is fantastic. This is what we want to make. I don't believe it for a second. Pretty much all these games, all these live services, every decision that's made along the way, it's purely about making more money. How can we get more people in? Well, we can do that by appealing to the lowest common denominator. If we make the game so generic that it looks visually familiar to people, that might bring more of them in. And these are probably going to be dumb people. They're going to get out their credit card. Every decision along the way, there's no creativity. It's not like crafting the latest Zelda or the next Baldur's Gate or whatever Larian might be doing. Well, you just kind of know that they're just trying to make decisions that are going to be interesting. They're going to capture people, create memories of the game, good word of mouth, all of that sort of stuff. None of that's going to go on in a live service game. It's just bringing in as many people as possible And to do that, you've got to play it safe. You've got to make it just bland and boring. That at least is what the Excel spreadsheets are telling the game executives, although it's not translating because this game looks like an utter flop, a dismal flop, nothing like I've ever seen in recent times. But I'm saying all that before even talking about the DEI stuff. Because you talk about an alien world where anything's possible, no, creativity, it's stifled more than it could ever be, because you've got to have every checkbox ticked, it looks like. You've got to have representation for obese people, I think I saw in one of the screenshots. Doesn't matter that people are jumping around doing backflips, you've got to have an obese person in there. Obviously, every possible race and sexuality that could exist except for white. And it's just kind of funny because like the story, the characters, they do not matter at all. From a business level, just sprinkling that on top. No one there cares at all about the characters and what's going on. Anything story-related, lore-wise, it only exists to bring people into the gameplay loop. But then they're still doing DEI representation and all of that. It's just really pathetic. It's not like they're telling interesting stories with diverse characters. There's going to be no real story. The developers don't care. They're just trying to extract money from you over time. But I did find this quite interesting. So there was a tweet I saw, and it's about the studio who made Concord. Firewalk Studios, the studio behind the impending Concord flop, has serious internal issues. Who could have believed that a studio that can't even get 2,500 people to play their game, that they could have issues? What's going on? One of their devs, Lisa Brown, aka War Turtle, came out as non-binary and forced everyone at the company to call her Professor. The Professor. She would regularly have meetings with cheesy phrases like teaching/learning with the professor. And this just makes me think, maybe this is the next logical step. Because we've had all the pronouns, we've had they, them. Some people have tried to go the extra mile. They, them wasn't getting them enough attention. They didn't feel special enough. So they've had he, they, I've seen, or her, them, for instance. Anything to make someone stand out because their personality must be so exciting. But now the next thing, maybe we're almost adding job titles into the mix. So someone says, I was a he, him, but now I'm the professor. And you've got to call me the professor. It's kind of like a Jill Biden or something, where it's like, I'm Dr. Jill Biden. And then I go to her and say, I'm not feeling well. What do you recommend? Are you going to diagnose me with something? And she goes, what are you talking about? I'm not a real doctor. But you want to be called doctor, so what's going on? She pushed extreme politics, hated guns, and wanted unvaxxed staff fired. I don't know if I'm allowed to say unvaxxed on here, but maybe with my Australian accent, the YouTube AI can't actually pick it up, so I'm sure it'll be fine. This is just part of why Concord is such a delusional mess. I found out a lot about the studio, just awaiting confirmation before going public with any other stuff I found out. So very interesting. Of course, Lisa Brown, non-binary, and if we go to their Twitter, where they call themselves the professor, she's made her tweets totally private, doesn't want the world to see. Even just ignoring the obvious insanity here, this is something I'm seeing at a lot of video game companies especially. It's happening in other industries. I've seen it in my job, for instance, but the video game industry, because it just lets in the crazies, it seems to be worse. It's this cultural rot where no one has a bad idea. And what I mean by that is, in sanity world, in normal life, if someone goes to their boss with an idea, and the idea is garbage, the boss should shoot that down. It doesn't mean they need to be nasty, call them a moron. I mean, maybe this person you could make an exception, but just sort of normally a healthy workplace. If someone comes to you with a bad idea, you might sort of say, look, I appreciate you coming to me. That idea is not going to work for this video game project. Maybe we can look at that down the track, but keep coming to me with your ideas. So I want to hear what you think. I value your opinion. Something like that. That doesn't happen anymore in the video game industry. What seems to happen at a lot of studios, probably a lot of these startup-y kind of studios making their first game as well, it's that everyone's ideas are awesome, and we want to get behind everyone's ideas. Everyone's of value. We don't want to be toxic and turn down ideas. And what ends up happening is someone has a shit idea, it shouldn't be in the game, but everyone has to be a yes man. Oh, okay, we'll incorporate that idea. Oh, yes, I might be the boss, but I'm not going to bother making any real decisions. That's how you get here. When you allow this moronic staff member to go around running, learning with the professor meetings and so on, a competent boss, a competent manager would say, what the fuck are you doing? Get back to work. Stop distracting everyone else. You need to do your job. We need to make this game. If the game fails, the studio's going to get shut and everyone's going to lose their jobs. And that actually is where the empathy comes in. It's not about just being an arsehole turning down people's ideas. The truth is, the boss has a moral duty to do the best job possible so the lights stay on, so people actually keep their jobs and can feed their families. That's not what's going on here. You're allowing insanity to run wild, these idiots to do whatever they want, and that's purely just a culture thing. It's an ideology thing as well. Again, like everyone's ideas are valid. We need to come together and all of that crap. I've seen it happen a million times, bad decisions being made, and that's obviously happened with this studio. It's how we've ended up with Concord. It looks like a disaster. No one is playing it. It's looking like one of the biggest flops ever for Sony, and they kind of deserve that because Sony have been chasing this live service money train. They thought it was going to be really easy. Turns out it isn't. They've had ups and downs with Destiny 2. Obviously, Concord, they had Naughty Dog working on a Last of Us online mode. That was cancelled. They've had plenty of other single-player teams too, teams that are known for single-player. They've tried to transition them to live service to make more money, and most of those games have either been disasters or they're in some sort of development hell, it seems like. So Sony made their bed, now they're going to suffer the consequences. And to be honest, 2024, it's looking like another gaming year where most of the critically acclaimed, well-selling games, they're actually single-player. And a lot of the live services, the Suicide Squads and so on, totally flopping. Concord looks like the next one. I love to see it. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.